You're listening to the Valley Current.
All right.
Again, welcome into the Valley Current. I thought I should have you on our podcast because your voice hasn't been heard for a while.
Yeah, that's a good.
The eyes and ears of Silicon Valley at this point.
That's good.
It's a good thing. Well, a couple of things have happened, including my mom's death and her funeral. The modern funeral, of course, these days is cremation. So you have this box now with the ashes and a death certificate. And then you do a little ceremony for that, which is, I guess, the much less expensive way compared to when my brother's funeral was like, I think they spent like $20,000 or something. Some crazy.
Really?
Like, I think the casket alone was like $10,000 or $15,000. I laugh because I think to myself, that stuff must totally deteriorate over time, right? It must.
Yeah, and it always reminds me, not to make light of it, but always reminds me of Kevin O'Leary at the Shark Tank would always say, I love businesses that involve death and marriage.
I mean,
people spend unlimited amounts of money.
It's recurring revenue, and it's it plays on people's guilt, I think, more than anything else.
Yes.
And it really sort of takes a portion of the gross domestic product and just burns it. I mean, stupid ways. No disrespect for funeral homes and cemeteries and so on. And I know there are some religions that are very strongly of the view that you have to bury your dead and you have to do it in a sort of fashion. And I was an altar boy growing up for many years, and it was considered an honor to be asked to officiate with the priest over a funeral because you got pulled out of the class, so you didn't have to be in the class for like the hour and a half, and you would get a tip from the people who were burying whoever they were burying. They would give the priest some money, and then they would throw you like a $5 or $10.
Yeah.
It was a lot of money back then. But, I was like, great, I'll do it. You bring in your robes and you be part of the whole ceremony with the incense.
I remember.
It's quite an industry. And people now are talking about maybe the new next industry is that instead of cremation, there's actually something that is more green. So you become like the equivalent of fertilizer. The equivalent of something that actually gets buried more as like I'm not going to say a powder, but more like a mush. And the mush, it was in the newspaper today.
Yeah, I actually thought you were the one that told me several years ago, we were talking about unique patents. I could have swore that you told me this story about the tree burying, right?
Yes,
the
there's a patent.
roots of the tree crushing the casket, and then the person becoming the tree, right?
Yes, that is actually I'll find the patent and we'll put it in the show notes. That's an actual U.S. issued patent on a process of the method of burial includes the way in which the person gets configured in a fertilizer type box. And that was in the newspaper today. There was a big story, and I'll find the newspaper article about how people are starting to think that is the more earth-friendly thing to do than taking up all this real estate with cement and headstones and, fake flowers and mausoleums and all this stuff. They're like, turn it into like fertilizer for the park and don't do something that doesn't take advantage of that. And so, it could even tie to some view, I guess, in the future where if you can harvest different organs as well as part of making the mush, because I think they grind a bunch of stuff up to turn it into a fertilizer gel or liquid or whatever it turns out to be. It's not the powdery dust that is, just a plastic bag full of what looks like, cocaine or sugar or something, right? Not that I don't know what cocaine is, but
I read an article. I don't know if I was listening to a talk show, and it caught my interest. It was the same thing, so it could be related to the same article or same. But I'll give you these two that were interesting twists. So one family has decided their dad, their grandparents were all artists, right? So they're going to take their dad's ashes and they're all going to put it in different colors of paint. And then they're going to all paint something and dedicate it to their father. The ashes are in that paint, a permanent painting.
So the question is that actually sanitary? I guess the ashes are they're pretty sort of washed out, right? I mean, they're pretty, it's high heat.
So the other one I'll leave you with, which I thought was funny, but I would be too gross for me, but you and I being Italian, we could appreciate it. One family was going to take their parents' ashes, put it in the tomato sauce, and then they were all going to have a spaghetti dinner.
Wow.
I couldn't go that far.
I would be like, really? I mean, that just sounds a little over the top to me.
Yeah, that's too much.
I mean, I don't know what the reaction that your system would have to that sort of thing, right?
That to me, I could almost, I thought the painting thing was a little unique. I could see that being symbolic and but the spaghetti thing was too much. That's just over the top. So,
well, there's this whole stuff at birth that people do where the placenta is like ground up and turned into a capsule that the mother has as a way to not discard part of what's been created. Mm-hmm. And the only reason I know this is my daughter, Anne-Marie, has been a doula and, a birthing nurse for many years.
Right.
And so she tells me stuff like this, that, this is part of the service. You take this, what was essentially part of a living being, right? The placenta was the food delivery system. And you, I guess you dry it out and then you grind it up kind of thing. Like it's literally at that level. So just to show you, I actually got the patent up while we've been talking. I searched. It's from 2008. I'm going to show you what it looks like.
About this,
I told you about it, but now I'm actually going to show it to you and I'm going to send it to you.
Okay.
Because it does represent a form of novelty. Now, whether it would actually stand the test, it's called the Green Burial System. It's by a guy in Florida, in Odessa, Florida. His name is Charles Scalisi III. And it says a single gravesite has upper and lower regions with a divider between the regions. A biodegradable primary container encompasses a primary remains in the lower region. An electronic information assembly in the grave is adjacent to the divider, and then it kind of goes through. But what's happening is essentially that tree is going to grow its branches and is going to penetrate this sort of soft enclosure.
Yeah. Okay.
And that tree is going to be nourished by what's there, right? So these are some of the drawings, right, of what's playing out. And I think the electronics are in there to sort of signal when something happens to actually result in the tree making its way down to the body, right? It's a green burial system where the decomposition that occurs makes its way into that growing tree. And I don't know if there's been anyone that's actually monetized this in any way. I haven't seen any advertising for it, but presumably someone could try to build a business around this green burial system, right?
I always thought it was a really cool concept, to be honest with you. So basically, the way I look at it is spiritually, you become the tree, right?
Yeah, spiritually, you're becoming a live, part of another live object, right?
Right. I always was very intrigued by that. I remember years ago, you told me that story. We were talking about some of the most unique patents you've ever seen, and this was one of them I thought you brought up.
Right. Well, it's like off the wall stuff that you wonder, was he thinking this would change the game in the way in which, there wouldn't be a burial site anymore? This wouldn't, there's a lot of rules and regulations too about how property gets zoned for being a cemetery, right?
Yeah. Right.
It's got all sorts of special regulations. So I'm not aware, but there was a story in the paper of a company in Oregon that's doing something like this. They're probably not doing all the electronic stuff that's suggested in this, but it's still out there and it's still got life to it. It presumably has some time left on it. It was filed in 2008, so it's probably going to remain in force for a few more years. It issued in 2009, so it should be, from the date of filing, 20 years, it should be 2028. So it's got some life left to it. Whether it actually turns into something that's valuable will be, but that's not the topic for today. I think the topic of today is much more about, are things getting better now that Gavin Newsom has been reaffirmed as governor? Because people are wondering, like, what's happening in California? The price of real estate keeps climbing. The price of money keeps staying low, although I guess there was some announcement from the Fed today that made people wonder, how long is that really going to last? I saw some sort of alert come through. Yeah, what are you seeing? Are you seeing the price of money change?
Well, it's interesting. The Fed came out, what's today, Thursday? I want to say the Fed came out Monday or Tuesday and made the statement that he doesn't see making a move on the prime, rate probably sometime next year. But for me, again, I'm not an economic expert, but I'm very concerned about inflationary issues that are taking place right now. And I mean, the cost of food and gas and hard goods and everything, when you look at the chart, everything has gone up. And so I have a lot to say about California and Newsom. Some of his, I don't know, the most recent bill he just signed today has got, he's now at war with what you would call, what should have been one of his advocates and one of his biggest donors, but now he turned Amazon. Amazon's upset at Gavin Newsom now.
Oh, is that right? So he's like followed the Trump playbook and sort of said Jeff Bezos is bad and Amazon is just getting too big and they want to expand in different ways, but not in California.
No, you know what they did, Jack? It's employee centric. So he made it so that this bill is going to allow employees in California to easily sue Amazon for work-related, too many hours, overtime, stress. And Amazon is not happy with it at all because they just say basically, these costs will be passed on back to the consumer and your deliveries are going to be more expensive now in California and all that because of this. So it's interesting. I don't get the Gavin Newsoms and the AOCs of the world that think that going after big companies like that is going to win them favor, but maybe
it sets up a straw man to some degree that will sell newspapers and maybe get donations to happen or get votes, right. I suppose, at some level. Look, Amazon Net has been, in my opinion, a great adder to the world. The fact that we can instantly get a flavor of a book, a sample for free. I mean, you could, if you have the time, you could sample so many different books in any field. Like if you want to learn a field, you don't even have to buy the books, just sample like the 20 top books. You get the first chapter, sometimes the first 2 chapters of each. For my money, scanning 20 books in a particular subject. We recently tried a case. I started scanning because it involved a lot of complicated issues pertaining to how Google AdWords works. So I started scanning, and there's like 100 books on the topic. So I started scanning for free the top 20. I have to tell you, if I had to buy those books, it probably would have been $400 or $500. I didn't pay a dime. I just scanned the first couple of chapters of each one. And I felt like, man, I got a world of information. I could have gotten similar information probably off the internet, but this was published quality book information that was better than just like tabbing through the Wikipedia or the internet. And I have to tell you, that's a marvelous thing to get that degree of knowledge instantaneously for free. I mean, how do you beat that?
Yeah, I don't know. It's I love Amazon. I realize, I get the monopoly part. I do get the part about small businesses starting they start their small businesses and Amazon's keeping an eye on things. So when they become successful, then Amazon knows. I mean, I get that part, but boy, they really provided some wonderful, wonderful services for people worldwide. I mean, and
it's fast. I mean, the technology is fast. It's just as fast as Google and searching. I mean, they have their own search engine.
I'll tell you the other thing is, and I know it may sound like a little thing, but it's a big thing to me. Anytime I buy something online, I always choose the option to go to Amazon and pay for it because I don't trust any other. That's another thing.
Not only that, you have rights of return. Right. Amazon will say, just throw it in a box and give it to the UPS center. And they've got a relationship with UPS where UPS automatically puts the label on. Mm-hmm. And you can't beat that. I mean, it's almost stunning. I don't know who handles all the returns. Like, I don't know who does all the work of checking to see if everything's been returned. But if you get something that doesn't fit or you're dissatisfied with its first week of operation or whatever it is, you can return it. Yeah. And they don't ask any questions. I mean, it's simple. Yeah. And to me, that's a big deal because to go to like even a Macy's or, the traditional stores I remember when I was a kid, most of them are out of business. There was always like a hassle and a haggle and where's the receipt and blah, 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 blah. I think they just cut through all that and said, hey, we trust the customer. We want to keep their goodwill. Yeah. It's amazing to me. Yeah. And it's caused a sea change of customer attitude. So now you have these car companies that say, test drive the car for a week and see if you like it. Return it if you don't like it. I mean, that's amazing. That was probably caused by Amazon indirectly, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I have some good stuff for our topic today on California. There's some new, even recent developments.
Okay, go ahead. Tell us what's going on from your perspective, because I've just been noticing people saying, when is the real estate in California ever going to stop appreciating in value? And people feeling like it's becoming impossible to get on the elevator and impossible, even though money is relatively cheap, to sort of secure anything that's decent. Now, people talk about that I've talked to are like, you can't get anything decent for less than $2 million. I remember not too long ago, it was like you couldn't get anything decent for less than $1 million. Yeah. Now it's like doubled in probably less than a couple of years, couple, 3 years like that.
Yeah. So a few things. We could start with real estate because that kind of drives the train down the track here in California. So, the prices keep going up. It's getting more expensive, as you just talked about. I mean, it used to be the average, a decent home is $1 million. It's closer to $2 million. That is correct. So that part, I don't see that getting much better in California. I'll specifically address the Silicon Valley and in this case, in this conversation, but the job market is still so strong. You have Google City that's launched and they broke ground. In the next 7 to 10 years, you're going to have another 20,000 people supposedly that are going to be in downtown San Jose. Facebook is going to be something around 8,000 to 9,000, and Amazon actually as well. So you have some major players here in high tech that are still really, have their roots here. And as long as we do that, as long as they have that, Jack, and they still are paying the income that they're paying some of these people, they're going to, I don't see that changing much. So as far as overall housing, unless there's something geopolitical or something that happens that we're unaware of, or I don't mean to bring this up negatively, but if we have another pandemic that's just as bad, or let's say we have some kind of biochemical thing that takes place, who knows? I mean, I'm not trying to be dramatic or negative, but those types of things could potentially hurt the market. But other than that, you could argue that during the pandemic, high tech, a lot of these companies got even stronger, more powerful, more revenue, more profits. And in this area, that drives the housing market. And then it's really
they could pay the higher salaries.
They really can. I mean,
money.
In my business,
stock options are worth more. The stock options are worth
more. Right. In my business and world of financing, Jack, it's not uncommon these days to have a couple that come together and say we're looking to buy a house, and we collectively make about $400,000 to $500,000 as a couple, and we're 25 and 26 years old.
Amazing.
I mean, can you imagine?
Years ago, people would be like, golly gosh, that's just amazing, right?
So the housing market is interesting. I don't see that getting any cheaper. I do think we're getting a bit of a leveling. So will we see 5, 6, 7, 10% a year? I don't think so. I think that'll flatten out. Now, I'll touch a little bit on housing that I feel very strongly about. I follow this a lot, and I'm convinced or feel very strong that vacation second home markets will be the first one to take a hit and have a fairly decent downturn. And the reason I say that is there's been an explosion of second homes and vacation homes, really driven by the pandemic and people thinking they could work from anywhere, go visit their second home in Montana or Wyoming and in these places. When I think we get back to reality, so what happens is you flooded markets now in a vacation second home environment, that when the market turns down or when people start going back to work and people realize they don't want that secondary mortgage in Idaho or Montana or wherever, right, those will be the first places that get sold. And the reason why I believe that the appreciation will take a significant hit is that they do not have the job markets to support any kind of sustainability in markets, in second home vacation markets like that.
Okay, so what you're saying is these people splurged and got themselves a vacation home in Podunk, wherever, which has no real sustainable job market. Exactly. Nice place to visit, but basically you can't live there. Too far away from a commute point of view. And when whatever shock happens, whatever the next shock is, because we're in a capitalist system that has a lot of shocks to it, notwithstanding whatever the Fed tries to do to adjust away from those shocks, the reality is that the shock will happen and then people will bail out and bail out quickly, everyone trying to head to the door at the same time. And so you'll see a certain collapse in that second home, vacation home kind of market. Now, the counter argument might be, no, there's enough gig workers that plug in from wherever, so long there's fast internet there, not to worry, the fast internet will allow other people to plug in and feel comfortable that they're living, and maybe it's by the ocean or maybe it's got a lake view or something, and they just want to live where they want to live. And that would be the counter, that there's enough people that have that kind of freedom and they're going to just make sure that there's fast internet. Because I've had some people say to me, oddly, hey, do you want to know where the fastest 5G is right now? It's in the middle of the country. It's like in Kansas. Like it's literally in Kansas, because that's where Sprint had or used to have. Now it's been merged in T-Mobile, so who knows where the principal office is. But they built out a lot of the 5G network in the middle of the country. And there are literally people that move to Kansas because they say that 5G experience is like so much faster across the board that they live more of their lives online. And they're in the metaverse already, if that's the right way to put it.
Well, I have, this will be the first time I mention anything. This will be on your show, Jack. I plan to do a podcast later this week or next week. But something came up yesterday that struck me, and I want to share it with you and your audience today.
Yes.
And that is, so the question is, I just heard something last night and this morning. It's alarming enough to think that we could get somewhat of a reversal. And I'm not saying a flood, but a reversal of people leaving Texas and coming back to California.
Okay, leaving Texas, leaving Florida, leaving Nevada, leaving
Really just
Washington.
Just Texas right now. And specifically, we all are familiar now with the abortion law of Texas, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
yeah, so there's enough people that are up in arms about this. It's so big that yet last night, Mark Benioff, who most know, the CEO of Salesforce, they have, I think, 75,000 to 80,000 employees, a lot. So he just made an announcement that anyone that is upset as he is about that new law, that he will pay for them to move out of Texas into whatever state they want to. Now, I know that that's not going to send a flood of 100,000 people a day, but you wonder if some of this political division, Jack, is getting so bad that when these states come up with these laws that really offend a certain element, you wonder if this is going to be a new kind of departure from someone just leaving California. You know, all these people left California because political reasons, taxes, and now he's basically inviting his Texas employees. He'll pay for everything if they leave Texas.
Yeah, I think the numbers are actually pretty small, so it's an easy political statement. I think he probably wants to run for office. That's typically what wealthy people do when they get bored with their businesses. They get like a little bit like Donald Trump. Hey, maybe I could run for office. Hey,
Yeah.
I can have a reality TV show. I could do a lot of stuff. Even if I don't succeed, my name will be in the newspaper. I think he was shocked that he ever got elected, but that's a separate story. But I think when you get to that multi-billion, I guess they call it now decabillion, at least 10 billion. You know, when I was a kid and you were a kid, when someone got to 1 million, it was like, man, you're a millionaire. You're a millionaire, man. And like everyone yawns in California. You need $1 million to buy a piece of property. Yeah, you get a bank to back you, but eventually you pay off the bank and you've got $1 million property. I mean, I laugh because I say to myself, you know, these guys that do and gals that get to this decabillion, it becomes, I'm sure, very intoxicating. And it becomes, so when he makes an announcement, he gets his name in the newspaper that generates publicity and fame. The real cost to the company is like, how many pregnant women can there really be that are on the payroll and that are in Texas and that want to get an abortion? Like, add all those, permutations up, right?
Yeah. So let me just make sure I'm clear. This wouldn't affect. This is not going to affect people that are potentially pregnant. I don't know if you've heard that, but there's a revolt, and they're actually going after companies like Southwest and Verizon and others that are headquartered in Texas. Yeah. So this is not necessarily people that are going to become pregnant, but people have such strong beliefs about Roe versus Wade that they would leave Texas regardless if they're a grandmother, grandfather, aunt, uncle, whoever. I mean, now I don't think that's going to happen on large scale, but there's a little bit of that. But the other part of California that I just don't know with with Gavin Newsom keeping his job, I think most of us were a little bit, we were anticipating whether that could happen or not. I never thought it could, but I do find it interesting that there was quite a scare. And I do find it interesting that for those, regardless of your political beliefs, that Gavin Newsom did not win that job back by defending his position in terms of all the wonderful things he did for California. He won that job by calling Larry Elder Donald Trump.
Right.
Yeah,
I don't think they had the right candidate. That's problem number one. I think the candidate that they had also didn't necessarily do the smart thing. I think choosing to be a Donald Trump lookalike in the state of California is pretty much doomed.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty shocking to me that they didn't see that, and that the Republican Party didn't see that. Be that as it may, there are still a lot of people that think that Gavin Newsom is not necessarily doing the best things for the state of California.
Well, no.
And the poverty issue, the homeless issue, the dissension between the ranks about who's making what money, the jealousy, the high-tech jealousy, you could say, that exists, the lack of fairness between the people at the top and the people at the bottom, the gig economy to the extent that people feel like they're doing robotic work. I mean, I think there's a lot of issues there,
So there are, and for those, I'm going to go through a quick list for those that want to either defend Gavin Newsom or they love California so much that it's a blind kind of love affair.
Right.
Real quickly, we have the highest gas prices, the highest gas taxes. Now listen to this one, Jack. So our gas prices on average are about 55 to 60% higher than Honolulu, than Hawaiian Islands. So think about that. Think about on the mainland, we still have higher gas prices in Hawaii. So just stop and think about that. So we have the highest gas prices. We have one of the worst educational systems now in California, which is really sad. You know, there's some of the highest rates of minority unemployment. We could talk about property taxes and the sales tax. All the taxes have been levied against us. The expense that it costs for employers. I mean, you know this firsthand. For companies to employ people in California is one of the most expensive states. New York's probably close, or the same.
Yes.
But so when it really comes down to it, I love this debate. I would love to have like a panel discussion on different opinions. How far will we go that we love California and the climate and the proximity to all these wonderful places so much that we're going to continue to get beat up? And I'm looking in the mirror when I say this, by the way. I've been in California my entire life.
Right.
I mean, and
you're born and bred. You've been there from the beginning. Your family's been there from the beginning. Right. You're not a transplant. I mean, look, I grew up in New York and was lucky enough to get into law school in California State Law School, University of California, which gave me the residence rate. I established residency right away, and they gave me the law degree was relatively inexpensive compared to what people spend today. I think total all in, I think I had saved up $10,000 or so. I think I spent all that in the 3 years of law school. But these days, people take loans for like, $100, $200, $300, $400,000 to get through law school. And then they sometimes don't even pass the bar exam. I mean, that's a shocker, right? You go do 3 years of law at a great law school. I mean, I was lucky enough, I told the story this week because when I got the offer to work at what's now Fenwick & West, back then it was Davis, Stafford, Kelman, and Fenwick, they said, by the way, we require all of our new people to take a bar review course. And I said, why? And they said, well, that just ups your chances of success. I said, yeah, how much are you willing to spend? And they said, and $500 back then, this is like quite a while ago, more than 4 decades ago. Yeah. They said, I said, just give me the money. I mean, I wish I would have invested it in like Apple Computer at that point, but basically give me the money and I'm just going to buy a bunch of used bar outlines, which I did for like, $20. I just did that in Florida. I think I sent you the notice because
congratulations.
I spent $50 in Florida on the used bar outlines. And I was preparing for trial as well in the case at the same time. My wife thought it was crazy. I would study maybe an hour or two a day. And she said, are you taking this exam seriously? I said, yeah, I am. Look, I've got all the bar review stuff. So, I thought it was a hard exam. It's 2 days. And I got the notice just this week. I was like wondering if this is bad news, I'm going to cut my throat because I've taken a lot of other bar exams. I'm admitted in so many other places. And I got the news that.
Stay tuned for part 2 of this episode of The Valley Current.